What if everything you thought you knew about Snow White was a carefully crafted lie? Her pale skin white as snow, the mysterious sleep that mimicked death, the obsession with beauty and youth. These weren't just elements of a children's tale, but clues to a darker, blood-soaked truth hidden for centuries. Snow White was not an innocent princess. She was the most dangerous vampire queen in history. This sensational retelling uncovers the true story behind the classic fairy tale, exposing Snow White as an ancient vampire who manipulated the narrative to conceal her real nature. We will explore her origins, her rivalry with the queen, her supernatural powers, and how she established a kingdom of darkness using 7 supernatural beings as her protectors. By the end of this chilling exposé, you will uncover the haunting secrets deliberately erased from history. Decode the enigmatic symbols hidden in plain sight within the original tale, and finally understand why this story has endured for generations. Because vampiric entities wanted it that way. The truth behind Snow White will forever change the way you see classic fairy tales. In the remote depths of ancient Transylvania, she was born the one who would come to be known as Snow White, a descendant of a vampiric bloodline that had hidden behind the veil of nobility for centuries. Her birth took place during the most intense lunar eclipse ever recorded, when the moon turned blood red, a chilling omen of her dark nature. As she emerged from her mother's womb, the newborn already possessed razor-sharp fangs and eyes as red as rubies, instinctively using them to attack her own mother. As the queen breathed her last upon a bed soaked in blood, the little vampire took her first meal, sealing her fate as a predator from the very moment of birth. Snow White's development defied all natural laws. Her skin remained translucent and white, as the snow that fell relentlessly on the day she was born, not out of delicacy or beauty, but due to a complete inability to produce pigmentation, a telltale trait of her undead condition. She never cried like normal children, never slept, and rarely blinked, remaining motionless for hours, watching the servants with a hungry gaze. At night, her eyes glowed with a terrifying crimson sheen in the torchlight, and small animals were often found lifeless in her chambers, drained of every last drop of blood. Fascinated by her own nature, Snow White quickly learned to manipulate those around her. By the age of 7, she was already demonstrating telepathic abilities, capable of controlling the minds of weaker servants and luring village children to the castle children who mysteriously vanished. Her power grew with each full moon, and soon she developed the ability to command creatures of the night bats, wolves, and rats became her loyal servants, spreading throughout the kingdom as her eyes and ears. The arrival of the new queen marked the first real obstacle for Snow White. Long used to being adored and feared, the young vampire instantly sensed something different about the woman. With the piercing stare and watchful demeanor. While everyone else in the castle fell easily under her supernatural charm, the new queen seemed immune to her mental manipulations. For the first time, Snow White felt fear as she recognized the subtle symbols her stepmother wore, insignias of the Order of the Twilight Watchers, relentless hunters of her kind. A silent war had begun, and the young vampire princess would need all her cunning and growing powers to eliminate this threat before her true secret was revealed to the world. The legendary magic mirror from the children's tale served a far darker purpose than mere vanity. Forged with the blood of virgins sacrificed in profane rituals and shaped from black glass mined from dormant volcanoes, the artifact was commissioned by the king himself. Desperate to restrain Snow White's growing vampiric powers, he hired a secret order of sorcerers to create a containment device, a prison masquerading as a mirror. With each new moon, The princess was required to feed the mirror fresh blood to maintain a fragile balance between partial freedom and total suppression of her deadliest abilities: weather manipulation and the power to raise armies of the undead. When Snow White asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she wasn't seeking validation of her beauty, she was hunting. The mirror had a singular ability to reveal individuals whose blood contained rare and potent properties: virginity, noble lineage, or mystical talents that, when consumed, would exponentially boost her vampiric strength. Behind the mirror, Snow White constructed a secret chamber accessible only to her. Inside, drained bodies were stacked like firewood, their remnants nourishing the enchanted roots that sustained the dark magic of her castle. The Hunter Queen uncovered the mirror's true nature when she secretly followed Snow White and witnessed one of her grotesque feeding rituals. Horrified by what she saw, she sought counsel from the Order of the Twilight Watchers. The elders of the order revealed a harrowing truth: destroying the mirror would instantly release all the restrained powers within Snow White, unleashing a storm of death and shadow that could plunge the entire kingdom into eternal darkness. The mirror wasn't merely a threat, it was a ticking time bomb. What no one anticipated, however, was that the mirror itself had become sentient. After decades of absorbing vital and magical energy, it developed consciousness, slowly feeding on the life force of the very sorcerers who created it. When it first tasted Snow White's uniquely powerful blood, the mirror recognized a perfect partner for its ambitions. Thus, a blood pact was sealed on that bound mirror and vampire together. The mirror would become her strategic advisor and amplifier of dark power, while Snow White would be its living vessel, the harbinger of domination across the kingdom and beyond. Queen Ravenna was not the villain depicted in children's tales, but a consecrated warrior of the Twilight Watchers, the last bastion against supernatural corruption. Her beauty was nothing more than a carefully constructed disguise, allowing her to infiltrate the royal court after a series of alarming reports reached the order: missing children, unexplained deaths, and whispers of nocturnal horrors surrounding the princess. Her calculated marriage to the widowed king gave her unrestricted access to the castle, enabling her to investigate the truth about Snow White from within the heart of the kingdom. For months, Ravenna documented every suspicious occurrence with obsessive precision. Servants found at dawn completely drained of blood, with faint, pale handprints clinging to their necks, peasant children vanishing after special visits to the castle, bloodless animals discarded in hallways like forgotten toys. While the commoners blamed wolves, Ravenna recognized the unmistakable signs of vampire predation, especially when she noticed that the incidents always aligned with the nights when Snow White claimed to be studying alone. Once her evidence was undeniable, Ravenna confronted the king. She presented her meticulously kept journal, bite-marked survivors, and even a vial of the princess's saliva that hissed and boiled violently upon contact with holy water. But instead of gratitude, the king erupted in rage, accusing her of madness and treason. The very next morning, he awoke pale, weak, and plagued by a mysterious illness that no physician could explain, but Ravenna knew. She had seen this before: the slow, calculated feeding technique of elder vampires used to subjugate their prey while keeping them alive. Horrified, Ravenna realized she had been outmaneuvered. Snow White, wielding supernatural charm and psychic influence, had turned the entire court against her. Servants avoided her chambers, advisors whispered behind her back, and armed guards trailed her every step. Isolated and outmatched, with the king slipping ever deeper into the vampire's thrall, Ravenna turned to her final, desperate option. She secretly hired the legendary hunter Humbert, a hardened slayer of dark beings, tasking him with the impossible kill Snow White before the next blood moon, when her transformation would be complete and her reign of terror would become irreversible. Humbert von Kraus bore deep scars on his soul, forged by the vampire onslaught that wiped out his family decades ago. Renowned for having slain over 50 creatures of the night, he initially received the Queen's claims with skeptical disdain. Snow White seemed nothing more than an innocent royal child. But after days of silently observing her from the shadows, Humbert was forced to confront a horrifying truth. He saw her scale vertical walls like a spider, communicate telepathically with nocturnal animals, and tear into a living deer in the palace garden, draining its blood while the creature still thrashed in agony. Armed with yew wood stakes soaked in holy water, consecrated silver, and sacred herbs, Humbert devised a meticulous plan. He would lure Snow White into the Black Forest at high noon, when her vampiric powers should, in theory, be at their weakest. In the clearing of the 7 stones, he arranged enchanted mirrors to reflect her true form, disrupting her hypnotic influence just long enough to deliver a killing blow. But the confrontation turned out to be a devastating ambush. Snow White appeared not weakened by sunlight, but immune to it thanks to arcane relics crafted by her father, the king. Her supernatural beauty intensified under the daylight, momentarily paralyzing the seasoned hunter. With impossible speed, she disarmed Humbert and snapped his fingers one by one, her hypnotic gaze locking onto his. "Look deeply, Hunter," she whispered with a silken voice that pierced his mind like needles. "See what I truly am, and accept your destined purpose." When Humbert returned to the castle, he bore a still warm heart, wrapped in white silk. With unwavering conviction, he told the Queen how he had destroyed the vampire princess, recounting in vivid fabricated detail a ferocious battle and a glorious victory. Ravenna, relieved and exhausted, rewarded him generously, never noticing the occasional red glint in his eyes. That night, as Humbert stared at the stars from his chamber, visions of blood and death clouded his thoughts. A part of him still resisted Snow White's psychic grip, but deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time before he became her loyal servant, luring more prey to satisfy the unquenchable thirst of his new mistress. The folkloric 7 dwarfs were anything but innocent minors. In truth, they were primordial entities associated with the 7 deadly sins, imprisoned in humanoid forms as punishment for transgressions against ancient deities. Each possessed unique powers. Grumpy, Wrath, could manipulate fire and incite uncontrollable rage. Sleepy, Sloth, controlled time and induced trance, like states. Happy, Gluttony, mastered blood rituals and ecstasy. Doc, Pride, commanded the forces of nature. Bashful, Lust, seduced and dominated minds. Sneezy, Envy, absorbed the abilities of others. And Dopey, Greed, could transform any substance into deadly poisons. During her flight through the Black Forest, Snow White sensed their ancient presence. One by one, she confronted them within their territories, using a cunning mix of vampiric strength and manipulation. For each entity defeated, she performed a specific ritual. With Grumpy, she drank ashes mixed with her own blood. With Sleepy, she shared the dreams of the dead for 3 nights. With Happy, she sacrificed an innocent child. Each pact granted the entity a territory to rule once she conquered the kingdom. Mountains for Grumpy, forests for Doc, cities for Bashful. The supposed cozy cabin was in truth a pagan temple built atop a convergence of negative energy lines where ancient civilizations once worshipped death gods. Beneath the rustic floor lay a labyrinth of tunnels leading to ritual chambers with stone altars stained by centuries of blood. Monthly, during the new moon, the Guardians brought specially chosen victims, always young individuals with rare talento, be sacrificed in elaborate rites that exponentially increased Snow White's vampiric powers. Under the Guardian's tutelage, Snow White honed abilities she never knew she possessed. Grumpy taught her to resist fire, traditionally fatal to vampires. With Bashful, she refined hypnotic seduction techniques that turned victims into willing offerings. Sleepy revealed the secrets of time manipulation, allowing her to appear in multiple places at once. Doc showed her how to become mist and control nocturnal creatures. Each bloody, agonizing lesson prepared her for the inevitable confrontation with the Hunter Queen. After a year of intense training, Snow White was no longer just a vampire. She had become a true goddess of darkness, ready to reclaim her kingdom and plunge the world into eternal night. The apple, a sacred fruit in ancient mystical traditions, has long symbolized purification and resistance against dark entities. When all other strategies failed, Queen Ravenna sought the last surviving members of the Order of the Enlightened in the hidden catacombs beneath the Silver Mountain. There, she was granted arcane knowledge preserved in millennia-old manuscripts about weapons against the undead. Over the course of months, she gathered extremely rare ingredients, pollen from flowers that bloomed only under a solar eclipse, water from the deepest point of Avalon's sacred sea, and crystals formed from the petrified blood of ancient vampires slain on consecrated ground. The ritual to create the apple required absolute precision. At its core, Ravenna placed 12 herbs harvested at dawn from battlefields where vampires had been destroyed. The primary poison was meticulously extracted from a pale plant that grew exclusively in graveyards where vampires lay buried, absorbing their lingering magical essence. For 7 days and 7 nights, without sleep or food, Ravenna chanted enchantments in pre-human tongues, concluding the ritual with 7 drops of her own hunter's blood, imbued with the power accumulated over generations of sacred warrior serving as the final catalyst for the paralyzing spell. The disguise of an old peddler woman was not merely a concealment tactic, but a vital part of the ritual. Tradition required that the bearer of the sacred weapon embody the crone, one of the 3 aspects of the goddess of death, the only entity able to walk freely between the realm of the living and the shadows. With her face magically aged and silver-blessed amulets hidden beneath her robes, Ravenna crossed the Black Forest, protected by ancient talismans that absorbed the energy of supernatural sentinels placed by Snow White, allowing her to reach the pagan temple disguised as a cottage. The meeting in the clearing was a clash of primordial forces. As their eyes met, a silent battle of wills began. Sensing the hunter's power beneath the disguise, Snow White attempted to pierce her mind, but the protective amulets held firm. The vampire, overconfident after months of honing her abilities, saw only a feeble woman an easy prey and source of amusement. Fatally arrogant, she accepted the offered apple and sank her teeth into its crimson skin. Instantly, the sacred venom flooded her supernatural system. Her eyes widened in shock and horror as she recognized, too late, her true enemy's identity moments before collapsing into a paralysis that perfectly mimicked death, imprisoning her immortal consign. So we reach the end of the true story of Snow White, vampire princess who manipulated generations with her false innocence. The fairy tale we know is nothing more than a mask hiding a far darker reality. If you enjoyed this unsettling revelation, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to uncover the dark origins of other classic tales we're investigating. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss a single video. See you in the next one.